Welcome to episode 37 of Bible Mechanics, where I try to convey facts and thinking that will help you as you read the Bible to understand mechanically how it was put together. It wasn't like a single author sat down and wrote a book, as we've talked about many times, or as I've talked about many times on these videos. The Bible was put together by a number of different people over about 1,600 different years, probably 36 authors, and it was and then pieced together over time. It's just really an amazing story, and part of the reason this is a playlist with numerous episodes is because there is so much to talk about. And today I want to talk about the church academy split or separation. When the church was first formed in the first century, of course, it was administered by the apostles, and they would appoint local people to assist them because the apostles were going from place to place. They couldn't stay somewhere forever. They might spend a few days or a few months or even, a year or two or three in one place. But then they would eventually have to move on. And so when they weren't there, they would sometimes write letters back. That's where we get the New Testament. And they would also appoint people in the local congregation to sort of be in charge for them, not to take their place per se, but to keep things in order until they got back, make sure that that the people were keeping to the routines that the apostles passed on, the way to read the scriptures as Jesus taught it, and of course conveying the apostles' eyewitness testimony of his resurrection from the dead according to those scriptures. And that took place in the first generation of Christianity, the first century. That was the one true church, which you can, on my website, just search for that one true church and there'll be an essay. A lot of essays on there, that's one of them. After that first century, when the apostles were gone and most of the churches did not believe the second coming occurred, that's another thing you can search on my website about. But they would typically be run by bishops, which basically meant it would be a one-head guy over each congregation, and the congregation was usually for a city. Now, a large city would have multiple bishops, or multiple churches rather. They'll usually have a single bishop for that city. A small city or town would have one church there and one bishop over it. And it's been run pretty much that same way ever since. It was in the 11th century, the year 1054, that the collective churches split into East and West, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and then about 500 years after that, it's marked as 1517 exactly. That's when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the church door in Wittenberg. That's the Protestant Reformation. So those are the three main branches of Christianity: Eastern Orthodoxy, Roman Catholicism, and Protestantism. And they all were pretty much run by bishops. Now they start using different names, and they have bishops and archbishops, and then in the Roman Catholic Church they have cardinals. I think they have archbishops in the Eastern Orthodox Church, but I don't know if they have cardinals per se. And the Protestant churches, of course, don't have a hierarchy that goes up to a pope. Eastern Orthodox churches don't either. But Protestant churches are usually organized by denominations, and they use all kinds of names. Like they'll use bishops, some of them use bishops, some of them use overseers, and so on. So that's the way the church has been run. And back in the early days, I'm going to count everything after the first century. That was the greatest generation of them all. That was the generation of the apostles that Jesus himself commissioned. After that's what I'm going to be talking about, from the second century onward. They didn't have a church and academy split like we do today. When I When I talk about academy, I'm talking about colleges and universities, higher education. Up until the Enlightenment, which would have been around 17th century, there was the scholars were all part of the church. So like if you study ancient scholars like Augustine, or Augustine, I should say, Eusebius, Jerome, Athanasius, these people were for the most part bishops of congregations. And they're the ones that had the time and the inclination to study and be the scholars over the scriptures. But once the Enlightenment came and colleges and universities education began to be separated from the church, then that changed. And so you would have departments of theology in colleges. It used to be dominant that they would have it taught in these colleges. And today they're just completely separate. You have a lot of schools like the University of North Carolina has I don't know what they call it, but it's some type of religion department. And Bart Ehrman is like the chair of the New Testament studies. You've probably heard of him. Well, it's all completely separate. The church has no control over these college professors. College professors have no control over the churches. And so it's completely different. And that's just something you need to be aware of, because the people that translate the Bibles are not people who typically work in churches. They may go to church. Some Bible scholars do, but many don't. Many Bible scholars, Bart Ehrman probably be the most popularly known one, and he's famously agnostic, or as he says, agnostic-leaning atheist. That's true agnosticism. I not only don't know, I don't even know if I'm leaning this way or that. So, but you really get a lot of strange opinions. The academy, that is to say the colleges and universities, are generally more liberal and more secular than the churches are, and the churches kind of stay away from that. The irony is that most of the pastors go to these schools and even the seminaries, and they're trained, but then they go back to the churches and they generally don't teach everything they learned in school because they couldn't keep a church together. Because how are you going to hold a church together if you stand up and say, we believe hardly any of these books in the Bible were written by the person who says they were? That's not the way you attract people who want to hear the Bible. So just be aware that college professors write most of the books about theology, most of the books about the studying of the Bible, study Bibles. That's all done by them, very secular. And then you've got churches, and then you've got a certain number of these professors who go to church and believe in the church, but they are the minority. And you just have to be aware of that as you read different materials. So as Jesus would say, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And of course that applies in both the church and the academy. But since you're going to have to get a Bible that has been produced by people, I want you to know who the Bible were, who was translating it, who was giving the study notes for it. You just need to be aware of that. Until next time, God bless you.